So it's 1:02. Hello everyone, we'll start our presentation now. Thank you for joining us today for our session on building a digital workforce. So a quick note before we begin, especially if it's your first Microsoft Teams live event, you'll notice the Q&A panel on the right hand side of the screen. Feel free to ask questions here at any time during our presentation today. We'll try and answer as many as possible during our Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Any questions that you post are only visible to the presenters here in this session. This session is being recorded, and after the event you'll receive a follow-up email with a download link and a synopsis of what we're covering today. So today's presentation will be focusing on a technology called Robotic Process Automation. How you can use this technology to create an automation roadmap for your organisation. So if you haven't heard of this technology before, or you've heard of it but aren't exactly sure of what benefits it can offer your organisation, this is definitely the right session for you. Leo and I are going to be covering exactly what this technology is, what types of processes can be automated, and how to get started on that automation roadmap. So in case this is your first introduction to the topic, I'm going to kick off this afternoon with a definition. Robotic Process Automation bots. They are small software apps that are deployed to your users' desktops or your servers. They mimic human actions by interacting with your business applications through the same user interface that your users work with, which enables them to automate repetitive tasks that normally the human staff have to take care of. And we'll be covering off quite a few demos in our session today. Now, RPA is often associated with another automation technology you've definitely heard something about recently. Now, AI is more of a technology typically used to analyze data and create insights or make decisions autonomously where possible, usually only after quite a lot of training. When AI and RPA are mentioned together, AI is often referred to as the brain, the one making the decisions, and RPA as the arms and legs, thing that turns those decisions into actions. AI modules can be added to RPA platforms, but RPA can also happily exist on its own with the humans making the decisions. Makes it a very affordable and accessible technology for those just starting out on the process automation journey. Now, regarding the name, RPA sounds quite a techie term. It's probably not the most user-friendly description for this technology, which is why we prefer to call them digital assistants, which has the added benefit of sounding a lot less threatening to the human workforce that you already have, which is a very good thing, because RPA is positioned quite differently to a lot of other process automation technologies, where previously the goal of process automation, be it mechanical or electrical, has been usually to replace completely entire jobs and tasks and remove the human entirely. In fact, for the last 250 years, we've been developing ways to fully automate entire processes to increase production and output, reduce any dependency on the skilled human workforce. However, it turns out that the displaced skilled workforce weren't as cool with the idea of replacement. And over the ages, there's been a fair amount of resistance to automation in general. And that's definitely a sentiment that continues to this day. Now, there's certain types of automation that will continue to change the future of jobs in the labour market, but RPA is actually pitched quite differently. It's considered more of an assistive technology, helping you automate the parts of the job which human staff aren't so good at and perhaps don't enjoy as much, as they definitely require less cognitive input. They tend to be those more mundane, repetitive tasks that often involve a lot of manual data entry and, of course, monotony. And that's why we prefer to call them RPA bots as digital assistants, and we refer to a fleet of them as your digital workforce. So as we said, RPA bots mimic human activity with the goal to replace manual and repetitive tasks in a particular role, as opposed to replacing the entire human. Now, they mimic human activity by simulating key presses in the same user interface that your human staff are currently using for your line of business applications. As it uses the same user interface as your regular users, it can work with literally any system, even legacy systems you may have previously thought were incompatible with automation. It reads and actions data in structured form, so these bots are relatively straightforward to train. It doesn't make keystroke mistakes, and it doesn't need a coffee break. And the whole system could be relatively quick to implement and scale on demand. So what task can a digital assistant actually undertake? There's actually little restriction on what tasks they can do once you've trained them. But typically the types of jobs are those which exist within the automation gaps of your current line of business systems. For example, getting data from one system into another, which usually involves a lot of manual rekeying. That could include getting data into your finance application from invoices, usually sent as PDF attachments and email, sales order entry, reconciliation from banking platforms, HR onboarding, creating all the necessary accounts for a new user, and a bunch of other IT tasks such as resetting user passwords. Bots also work really well in contact centers, where they can rapidly aggregate information from multiple systems to help human operators assist customers on the phone more quickly. The list is quite extensive. Now, when it comes to exploring what type of processes are suitable for automation, it's important to pick processes that fit a specific profile. When we work with our clients to select an appropriate process, we use a weighting criteria that looks like this. So the primary drivers for a good candidate process should be highly manual and repetitive processes, the rules-based processes, so it's more straightforward to train one of the bots. They should have a low exception rate as well, so we can keep the human out of the loop as much as possible. And the processes should have a standard readable electronic input type. So if you're looking to automate paper-based processes, you would need to look for another Konica Minolta solution to digitize those into a format which is compatible. Bonus points are awarded for processes with a high volume, which can have a positive impact on the ROI, and mature and stable processes, which we're not expecting to change significantly in the near future. So now we have a definition of RPA, an idea of how it works, and the criteria for selecting a process. We have enough to start creating an automation roadmap. Now, normally we see most process automation projects are designed by a committee, and they normally end up in IT for implementation. However, as one of the opportunities for quick wins with RPA lies with users, suggesting which tasks and processes from their own role will benefit from automation, we normally advocate democratizing the entire process for process selection, encouraging early engagement with staff as soon as possible. There's lots of ways you could do this. For example, a staff survey or a suggestion box. But now we're just going to demonstrate a tool that makes this process very straightforward, and that's part of our RPA platform. In this tool here, as a user with an idea for a process automation, the system's going to guide me through 9 questions, so the process owner can help profile how applicable this particular process is for an automation project. So my idea for process automation will be timesheets, processing timesheets that I receive from contractors every week. Simply have to give this a name. Select which area in our organization this process will apply. So it's definitely in payroll. It'll be in payroll calculation. Now here come some of the questions which will enable us to prioritize and apply that criteria, the weighting criteria, to select a very, very suitable candidate for automation. This particular task is very rules-based, and it's very much digital. I'm receiving these every week via email as an attachment. The structure of the input data is very structured. We offer a template for timesheets, but we are expecting that particular template will be updated in the near future. Here I can, as a user, add some work instructions, my SOP or a flow chart to help with the review process. So I'm just going to add my flow chart for the process here. Now I need to select an owner of the process, and this is where the task will go now for some assessment. So I simply put in the name of the process owner so they can be notified and start the review process. So now it's off to the process owner to see what the system looks like at the back end and assessing the process and priority.
Thank you, Seth. That's perfect. So as Seth pointed out, as the process owner, I get a nice little notification via email that Seth has asked me to review an idea that he has come up with, which will help with automation. So I can now go on and do a detailed assessment of the process and apply those parameters that Seth showed us in the earlier slides and see how well this process is suited for RPA automation. So I can look at the information here on my screen. So you'll notice it's a different view to what Seth was saying, which was simply the front-end view for employees to have an easy UI to input ideas into, not wanting to complicate matters for them. So what I can see on my screen here is the automation name, the description, the area of accounting, and then I can go in and start adding further points. Being a process owner, I'm well aware of pain points within the process already, so I can add those in here. So obviously this is time consuming due to, I know the volumes are pretty high. Manual processing leads to errors. Then we can go on and capture the negative impact as well. So what that means is delayed payments, contractors not getting paid on time, incorrect payments to contractors, essentially slowing down your month-end processing with your key resources tied up in manual repetitive tasks. You'll also notice the format for this detailed assessment is essentially nothing but building a business case for your automation project. Where a traditional business case might have taken you say weeks to even months to build and approve. Today, we're going to show you how you can build that in a matter of minutes, provided you have all the information handy, of course. So from a high-level assessment point of view, Seth pointed out that the process is very rule-based, it's very digital, very much structured. From a stability point of view, he did point out there's a minor change expected, and he added a comment in there saying an update to timesheet change template is anticipated. I'm aware of that, and I don't see that as a major hindrance. As we can go down the track, when that does happen, we can simply tweak the bot to accept the change. So in terms of the detailed assessment, I can scroll down. You want to start in a structured manner. So one of the first things I want to understand is, what is my primary goal of automation? Is it cost? Is it quality? Is it productivity? So in this case, it's quality. We want to pay our suppliers on time. We also want to pay our suppliers at the right rate, whether there's overtime involved, etc. In terms of environmental stability, you want to understand if the process is going to change in the next 6 months or if there's any application changes. So if there was some, you could always select from these options here, but we don't expect any change. All of this at the end is, as I'll show you, is going to impact the automation score and the ease of implementation as well. So there's no application change expected in the next 6 months. I can then scroll down and start capturing our employee profile to also understand the cost of the current process as is. So here I can input, which I already have just for the sake of saving time during this demo, the average working days in a year. So I've input 220 days, 8 hours per day on average. Average employee cost per year is roughly $80,000. I know that, and they're part of my team. And then I can get into process volumetry, just to understand, what are the volumes we're dealing with. So, and the frequency. So here you can see the frequency is pretty much weekly. You're receiving roughly 450 timesheets on average. The staff are taking roughly 3 minutes to process each timesheet, and that's a pretty conservative effort, considering they have to download an attachment from the email, open the attachment, log into the HR system, key in the timesheet data, as well as rework and validate the data they have input before the final release payment. So this gives us a total processing time of almost 1,100 hours per year. Now, what you also want to take into consideration is your average error rate. So typically, you can see the average error rate is 15%. I know, and this is when we are doing that validation check. We understand on average 15% of the transactions are incorrect. The rework time for that is roughly 2 minutes. So the total rework time per year is 170 hours per year. And then you can also add, if you choose to, the average work that is reviewed or audited as a percentage of the total volume. So we can put in a conservative figure of 10% there. Your review time is roughly 1 minute. So that adds another 39 hours per year spent reviewing your work. Then you want to go on and add how many employees are performing the task. So for the limiting of this demo, I've put in 2. It could be more. And you arrive at a final figure of the total time needed to perform the work as is at roughly 1,300 hours per year, which is essentially 75% of those 2 resources' time spent doing manual data entry, repetitive, mundane processes. So the cost of your process as is process is roughly $60,000 per year. The next thing you want to start looking at before you finalize your business case is the process ways of working. So what are your process peaks? What are the average number of steps involved? Just to understand the complexity of the implementation. So it's a regular month-end closing process. How many average number of steps involved? It's usually less than 20 steps, approximately 7 steps I've mentioned in the comments here, right from receipt, posting through acknowledgement. How many ways are there to complete the process? So it could be the process is completed the same way every time, but we might have 1 or 2 variations depending on the type of employee it is, or whether it's an employee or a contractor. But it's always less than 5 ways to complete the process. Then you go on and try and understand what the data input looks like. So what is the percentage of digital data input? How much of it is scanned data input? And you can put that percentage over here. You can mention comments like Seth said, it's an Excel template. And the printed templates can sometimes be scanned in, which, as Seth mentioned, you can utilize our OCR technology to digitize for the RPA solution to ingest. Percentage of structured digital input greater than 80%. The last 1 or 2 bits of information that you want to put in is look at what are the applications involved in this entire process. So Excel templates received as attachments from Outlook, which we've mentioned here, and the data that needs to go, the application it needs to go into is the SAP HR system, which we mentioned here. So as you can see, we're building out a very comprehensive view and picture of the process right at the get-go, and trying to understand if it's suitable for automation. You can then go on and add what are your expected benefits. So obviously no errors, on-time payments, faster processing, freeing up your staff time. The list can be quite, it can be as detailed as you like. I'm going to leave the actual benefits part blank because this is something you come in and fill once the solution has gone live and you want to start capturing your lessons learned, benefits, and compare them against your baseline. You can capture the challenges as well. So one of the challenges could be that the template is changing, or change management might be an issue. You can list those out if you like, but for the sake of the demo, I'm going to say there's none at this stage. And as I said earlier, you can then come back and look at your encountered challenges and probably capture some lessons learned as well. The other good thing here is you can also attach media, so images, process, capturing the actual process, video from the user, etc., in this assessment questionnaire. And when you use a tool like this, you have the advantage of adding other automations which are similar to this for you to review and learn from, to cut down the implementation cycle for this idea as well. So once I'm happy with this, I can go ahead and save this and approve this. And once I've saved and approved this, this then goes, this is essentially then qualified, and you can then move on to the actual implementation. Your project manager can be notified, and they can start going out and building the solution. So you can see there's an overview here. The assessment score is in front of us, calculated really quickly. This information can be published to your CXOs to review and further approve if you like. The solution's automation potential is pretty high at 88%. Ease of implementation based on the process volumetrics we captured is 92%, and benefits are more than 1,100 hours per year. So now that we've done this, as I said, the project manager comes in. He also assigns, the baseline project costs, the solution analysis, design, development, testing. So once they've done that, and what I want to do next is show you the actual solution live in action. So bear with me a sec while I swap over to the solution. Right. So what you can see here is this UiPath Studio. You can trigger the bot based on different, sorry, that's the wrong one. It's the one I wanted to show you. So what the bot is doing here is it's sitting in the background. It's waiting for the incoming timesheet emails. It picks up the timesheet attachment if there is one. If there isn't an attachment, it can send an email back to your staff member to reattach it. It then goes on and downloads the attachment. It also has logged into the HR system here, SAP in this case, as you can see. It is looking up the employee or contractor based on their unique ID that it has actually extracted from the timesheet. It then goes on and populates the timesheet data, checks if there is any overtime if you want, and then moves on to the next timesheet. So if you think about a payroll officer doing this manually, especially for the use case we built, which was about 450 timesheets a week, such a high incoming volume can be very, very time consuming. And we're all human, so there may be errors which obviously require a lot of rework and essentially doubling up of your effort with validations and checks, etc. So with the bot performing this task, as you can see on my screen here, the errors essentially go down to 0. Processing is almost real time, meaning staff are getting paid correctly on time as well. Meanwhile, your payroll officer can focus on tasks that require their attention. So important to bear in mind here that what we have done is essentially slowed the solution down just for you to be able to see it mimicking human actions. Now, a bot could do this on average of 32 times faster than a human, if not faster. It can also do this entirely in the background while the payroll officer is working on other tasks. So what I'm going to do is, so once it's completed the timesheet data entry, it goes a step further and also generates an acknowledgement email for that employee and sends that email. So that employee has now been notified as well that their timesheet has been received and processed. So Let me go back to Automation Hub here really quickly and show you the cost benefit analysis that I was alluding to earlier. So as you can see, we did a detailed analysis. We qualified the project. We've implemented the project. The project manager had come in and put in a baseline project cost. For something as simple as that, you can be up and running within a matter of days. So we estimated roughly 8 days to go live, including analysis, design, development, and testing. The actual new estimate is something the project manager manages. So, the days can go up and down. We all know projects never run that smoothly, but, some tasks take longer, some might take even lesser. So on the whole, it finished up in 8 days. And the solution has then calculated your benefits and ROI for the next few years as well for you to review. So your pre-automation costs are listed here, and you can see from year 2 onwards, once your implementation has been done, the benefits keep increasing year on year. So moving on from that, what I want to show you is another generic demo scenario, which involves invoice processing into Dynamics 365. And this one utilizes the OCR component because invoices can be scanned in, invoices can be received as digitally bound copies via email, and how it works in conjunction with RPA. I'm going to go ahead and play this one. So again, the bot can be triggered manually. The bot can be triggered on the receipt of an email or a status change in your ERP system. So what you're looking at here is your typical invoice, with the header information, footer information. There's a lot of line items on there. The bot is then simulating the user. It's logging into the ERP system, Dynamics in this case. And it's going to go into the purchase order preparation screen. So what it is doing is essentially creating the purchase order retrospectively based on an incoming invoice as a business rule. So you can see it's very quickly, once it's OCR'd the solution and made it text searchable and readable, it's going to start filling in the header information as it is doing so. And now it's going into the line item information and filling it out. Again, bear in mind what we've done is really slowed down this demo for you to understand how it's mimicking human action, but something like this can be much faster, more accurate than doing it yourself. So if you think about it, average data input time for an invoice with this many line items, I think there was about 8 or 9 line items there, is in the region of 3 to 5 minutes for an experienced AP officer. Now the bot can do this in a matter of seconds. So if you do the math on that, you can see the cost savings for a business process. For a business processing roughly 1,000 invoices a month can be quite substantial. So it's going to go on and do that really, really quickly and finish off keying the invoice into the purchase order screen, as well as upload it into the invoice module within Dynamics. What it's doing next is it's going to update the invoice number for the customer service module as well. This is so it's looked up the vendor based on the vendor ID, brought it up, and this is so when the vendor does follow up on payments, the customer service team can quickly look up the invoice and the comments in the comments section there. As you can see, it's been posted, essentially now allowing you to provide better service to your suppliers. So what does this mean from an accounts payable point of view? It essentially means you're processing your invoices quickly, essentially giving your business a real-time view of your cash flow status at any given point of time in the month, rather than seeing a flurry of activity at the end of the month and seeing your cash flow fall off a cliff, so to say. There are fraud checks built into the entire process, so you ensure you're paying to registered suppliers only, and any changes to bank details of suppliers can be flagged as an exception, requiring further validation by a human operator. You always ensure you're paying the right amount on time as per the terms, reducing rework and the toing and froing that can typically happen with your suppliers as well. You can now start availing early payment discounts should you choose to do so, providing further returns. And I guess the end goal is, as Seth said, bots are your digital assistants, and you want to leave your staff to focus on exceptions and other value-added activities within your business. So as you can see from this process heat map, RPA can be applied across a variety of different functions within your business, whether it's HR, whether it's finance, IT services, etc. And what we aim to show you today is just the tip of the iceberg. And what we'd like to do is urge you to go back and think where RPA can be applied within your business as well. I want to mention a recent case study where we've gone live with a large utility company here in New South Wales, where their end of month work order reconciliation process was taking them roughly 2 days to finish, and it was highly manual. There was multiple applications involved. There was 2 or 3 different databases involved where they needed to validate the work order number. There was no single source of truth. So the staff was spending, I think they were comparing roughly 450 to 500 work orders on a weekly basis against 3 to 4 million records in the databases. And the staff was spending a huge amount of time doing that manually. So once we implemented the RPA solution for them, we brought that time down to less than 2 minutes, from 2 days to 2 minutes. So that's this kind of value you can start seeing from an RPA solution pretty quickly. I think that project itself went live in a matter of 8 to 9 days. So with that, I'd like to, keeping the time in mind, move on to Q&A before we wrap up.
Thank you, Leo. Look, before we dive into the general Q&A, there's one question here. We've got little time left, so I thought we'd dig into this one. The question is, can we build bots ourselves? So look, the answer is yes. Typically, we see a client's first automation project is normally quite a sizable project covering multiple processes. It's normally the easiest way to achieve a quick ROI. But you're normally left with some bots that perhaps have some excess capacity left after they've, as you heard Leo with this case study there, can perform some of these tasks so much quicker. And yes, our package does come with tools that enable you to create your own tasks. So I thought, Leo, see if we can get it done under 5 minutes. I will create a bot, as we did the other day, for the application for data entry.
Perfect. So yeah, while you do that, I can probably explain what you're doing there just to allow you to build it out freely. So this, what you're seeing on your screen here is some sample data in an Excel format on the left. We've mocked up a finance application on the right, which this could be any application. As you know, RPA can work with pretty much any application out there. So the process that Seth is going to build out here is inputting that Excel data into the finance application. This is a daily end of day sort of an activity. So Seth's gone into the Studio Community Edition. He is now going to indicate to the bot which application it needs to use to enter the data into. It's now, then what he's doing next is training the bot by simply dragging the activity from the left on where to pick the data or the Excel file from within, it could be a network location, it could be email. Next, he's going to scroll down and look at an activity which trains the bot to extract data from each row within that Excel file. What he's also doing there is explaining to the bot that there is a header row for that Excel file. And then he's going to scroll through and select another activity which tells the bot where it needs to type in that header information from that Excel file. So he's going to confirm that for each of the header fields within that Excel file. So he's going to quickly drag this out, and he's going to now select the next header field for that row, and he's going to map it out to the Excel file. And then he's going to drag out the last field that needs to be entered in. So you can see this is using technology called computer vision, meaning it is not zonal, your traditional zonal recognition. So if you move the screen around, it will not affect the bot navigating to the correct area within the application to input the data. So then what he's done is he's clicked on the accept button at the bottom, which the bot needs to click on to ensure that the transaction number is generated in the finance application. Finally, we want to then extract the transaction number that has been generated in the finance application. So he's showing the bot where to extract that from, and go back to the Excel file and input that transaction number against each row or transaction within that Excel file, so that can be captured for compliance purposes. So this is one of your, this can be, there are so many tasks like this which are manual, repetitive, which users perform daily. So as you can see, Seth's gone in there, he's completed that. So now he can go on and run the project. He can do it manually, and as I said earlier, you can trigger this process at a specified time frame. So Seth, if you can go on and run that project, let's see the bot in action, fingers crossed.
So like you said, Leo, we slowed it down slightly just so that you can actually see what's happening. Otherwise, it's a pretty dull demo. And of course, this is the simplified version of the user interface for training the bots. But as you can see, in I think it was well under 5 minutes, we've managed to completely automate that process.
I think it was about 3.5 minutes there, Seth. Sorry.
Getting faster, thank you. So this is happening in the background. Typically, a user will kick off this task and go back to working on something else, hopefully less monotonous. And in just a few minutes, we're complete.
Yeah. Perfect. So I guess to summarize the question there, answer to that question there, Seth, the bot can be built by your employees, by your staff. The solution provides a huge range of activities. As you can see, it was all drag and drop and pretty intuitive on what you wanted to do. With a couple of runs, you can start managing it yourself. So as you could have your employees and staff members building the bots themselves, modifying the bots themselves in the future as well. There may be cases where you need to integrate directly. The beauty of the platform is that it comes with connectors for most commonly used ERPs such as Salesforce, SAP, etc. So you can cut down on that implementation timeframe and complexity pretty significantly. So Seth, I'm just going to move back to the Q&A slide here, if that's all right. So did we have, were you going to curate the questions, Seth?
We do, yes, we've got quite a selection here. So aside from creating the bots, another question we've got here is, how can you verify that the information will be secure if the process is performed by a bot? Leo?
Yeah, so look, because RPA obviously deals with confidential and sensitive business data, the software is built with enterprise-grade security from the ground up. In fact, we found your data is more secure when compared with the traditional office worker, since all the activities are recorded and auditable at any time. So the sheer fact that the process is owned by a digital worker means additional safeguards can be implemented, right? So what that means is there is security built into all aspects of the bot, whether it's at the database layer, whether it's the UI layer, whether it's in the cloud or the security layer. So it's got, I think recently UiPath passed a very stringent NASA security certification test, which I can say with some confidence is probably the hardest one to crack.
Okay, there's another question here. How mature do your existing processes need to be in order for RPA to work? So I guess, Leo, in our experience, the more mature a process, the less likely it is to change. But there again, I guess if you've got a process which you already got in your mind as very stable and unlikely to change, the fact that it may be recently new still wouldn't preclude it from being a candidate for automation?
Absolutely. So like I said, minor changes we can cater to. A mature process essentially is one which is it doesn't have too many exceptions and usually can be completed in one or two different ways. So yeah, we certainly can, RPA can certainly be applied to something like that after further qualification.
That's a good segue to another question here. can the process identify an exception and advise a human to process that exception? So the idea is that we automate the easiest part of a task. That's where you get the biggest bang for your buck. And when we have to start adding in various amounts of logic to make decisions, that's where it can slow the process down. So of course, there's a user interface for users to be able to review data that may be extracted and may be outside of tolerance or maybe an exception to process. Obviously, you want to try and minimize that, but the bot can run in the background and it simply advises the user when it needs some attention to process something that maybe it hasn't seen before.
Yeah, so just to add to that, Seth, take an example of an accounts payable invoice, right? And the bot can do a purchase order validation, as we all know, in an accounts payable process. It cannot find the purchase order, or for example, the invoice value exceeds the purchase order value. The bot can flag an exception. There is, as you pointed out, Seth, a user interface for exception handling, and the user can go in and either modify the PO and reprocess the invoice, or reject the invoice and ask the supplier to resubmit with the correct amount. So absolutely, it can fill in those gaps as well.
So in the automation hub, you show some great figures there for scoring a potential candidate for process automation. Does that cost benefit identify headcount savings?
Essentially, yes. So if you remember, if that's how you want to look at it, because if you recall when I showed you the time spent by your staff on the manual repetitive task, which was, I think, in that scenario 75%. So you can save 7.75 headcount just by automating that process. So if you had more staff there, say you were looking at 4 or 5 staff doing that task, you could certainly look at a headcount reduction or reallocation, whatever you choose. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now we've had a few questions on a similar theme here about the costing for a digital assistant, maybe what the minimum entry point is. So I guess you say there, from our experience, it depends what processes you want to look at automating. I know the bots aren't very expensive. They're a mere fraction of what it would cost to have a human worker. I think probably fair to say the larger part of the investment is in training a bot to do it, to perform whatever task you need it to do, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I think our internal criteria is about 4 hours a week, something like that. So if you can find a job that can be automated and save that many hours a week, you're probably onto a winner. And look, if you're interested in finding out more about the cost, we do have a digital worker starter pack available, which is 2 full-time digital assistants or bots with enough days for onboarding or training, as we call it, to automate a whole range of tasks. The cost of that per month is a fraction of one human employee. So it's a real workforce multiplier when you think about it.
Yep. So I guess there's another one I see here, Seth, which asks, what kind of resources or expertise do I need to provide for an RPA project to be delivered successfully?
Yeah, so typically an RPA project isn't too resource intensive to deliver. I mean, in our experience, an automation project, typically the process owner, the application owner, and IT are required from a client's end. And obviously, as part of a managed service, we take care of all the bits in between. So it's many of our larger projects have started off quite small, quite modest, as well, as clients may be looking at a particular process or pain point, be it for efficiency or compliance reasons. And then, of course, when you've got the bot and the platform in place, you're able to and be able to look at the other opportunities that are possible, maybe creation of the bots yourself or as part of a further managed service.
Perfect.
So 45 minutes, I think that we are at the end of the session. I think, Leo, whether there's anything for you to add at this point?
I guess what I'd like to really do is just surmise the presentation really quickly, if that's all right. So hopefully, we've demonstrated to you all today how RPA can deliver the kind of efficiency gains that I have up on my screen here, and you're already thinking of ways you can apply it. But importantly, we hope we demonstrated the entire automation journey, right from idea inception through to implementation and go live. By enabling your staff to generate ideas, you build a healthy automation pipeline that is delivering your business continuous improvements year on year. And the importance of which cannot be understated, as you can imagine, in these dynamic and disruptive times we are in. So that's all I really had said, unless you had something else to add.
No, that's good. Thanks, Leo. So thank you for everyone for attending. As we mentioned earlier at the start, you'll receive a follow-up email with a download link to the recordings and a synopsis of our session today. Remember to reach out to your KM representative and ask about our digital worker starter pack or about arranging a process automation assessment workshop. Both Leo and I will look forward to welcoming you to another webinar in the near future.
Giving shape to ideas. Konica Minolta.